Hi there, guys. Welcome again. This is Ade Awokoya here on the website, and I'm bringing you chapter 3, Maverick, from my book, Coaching for Purpose. So, hang in there. Privilege. That's the first chapter. I'll just, oops, scroll up and down. Bear with me. Right. I realized my privilege after landing back in the UK in 1998. I had made my trip simply with a duffel bag, like backpack kind of, but a corporate one, and turned up with my Nigerian passport stamped with the right of abode. I couldn't find my previous one, UK passport. The immigration officer raised a quizzical eyebrow and queried why I had queued on the foreign line. After all, he pointed out I was born in the UK. So, boom. Yes, I didn't have to scramble around for right rubble and all of that. But anyways, that's another story. He looked askance at my duffel bag and waved me through. So I strolled through the customs zone. Green sign, nothing to declare since I had no suitcases checked in. My thoughts wheeled back to my last day in the UK, to be precise, Montrose, Scotland in 1986. I had graduated the year previously as a chemical engineer in the States and spent the summer in Westchester County living a good life with my dad, who was then the Nigerian Consul General based in New York. However, I was unable to get a job due to my student status in the States. And then my parents hit on the bright idea that I could be bundled off to the UK for an engineering internship. A phone call to the right quarters, and I was accepted with Glaxochem. So got on the plane straight to London HQ, and that's where the fun came to an end, because the big chief at HQ gave me a joining letter to start with their faculty in Montrose, Scotland. This was a shock to my system, since I had planned on spending time and board with my cousins in London and hitting the clubs. This was about August, September. Whoa. So it was a culture shock. Moving to this provincial village situated on the Scottish coast. Firstly, I had to stay in a bed and breakfast since there was no suitable accommodation for short stays and I had no car to drive. I had a car in the States, so was reliant on riding a bicycle to work. The mitigating factor was that the Scots are a friendly bunch. I love their liquor, and if you just close your eyes, the accent sounds like Nigerians. Yes, ma'am. Suffice to say, I gave my notice within 3 months. Yes, I did. Upset by sponsors and the family, and got on the plane back to New York. Like a friend of mine says, privilege is invisible to those who have it. How was I to know? I had a world in my oyster, and I just, you know, made the best of it. Anyways, moving on, the highway. Once I got through the customs zone at Heathrow, I had to find my way to East London, where friends had invited me to stay for a short while after I had explained Project Icarus. The project name was a nod to the idiom "Don't fly too close to the sun." This was my thoughts about my harebrained exile scheme to escape the Nigerian patriarchy. The duffel bag was my only possession after moving out of my Lagos flat, which I had left fully furnished with my car in the driveway as a sign of rebellion, and I dropped off all the keys with my folks before getting on board the plane with a one-way ticket. He's got a ticket to ride. Yeah, 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 yeah. Anyways, now, yes, it's true. 5 years, 3 years previous to that, still in Lagos, I had also quit a previous job, corporate banking in a commercial bank, and I'd set up a consulting firm. I hitched it up. I got office space from a good friend who had a legal chamber, prime location in the city square, log into my network at the club, find assignments, things fell apart. Since I only found out much later, my communication and soft skills were woeful, and prospective clients perceived me as arrogant. And in a way, it was my way or the highway. But how was I to know? I wasn't a coach then. So I had bought into the fallacy of being independent and self-made, so refused to grovel to the powers that be, that's the patriarchy, and the establishment, while in Lagos, of course. I found out my reputation from the bank of refusing bribes and kickbacks had gone around, and I was seen as inflexible in business practice. I had to fall back on sub-consultancy and contracts, did some kind of small work with World Bank, which gave me less than my projected income. Suffice to say, I was a failure. Flashback now. After my engineering internship and return to New York, I had taken the plunge and arrived back in Nigeria with the intention of fulfilling my 1 year period with National Youth Service Scheme and returning back to New York for graduate studies. That was the plan. Fast forward to completing another internship with Gulf Oil and failing the final interview at Shell Oil for a drilling engineer position, I was stuck. My parents, for reasons to be revealed later, fabulous secrets, did not welcome me back to New York, so I was stuck in Lagos. However, the strings could be pulled, and I had to embark on corporate career working with multinationals in Lagos before I ended up with a bank, and I found out I was quitting jobs along the way because I just wasn't a corporate person. But here we go. John Donne quotation: "No man is an island, entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main." Growing up, the child is the father of the man. We are all products of our background, and the path to self-development is a different track for everyone. I will describe my initial bringing as a cookie cut stuff. Like seem like most everyone. Since my father joined the civil service at the country's independence in 1960, I was brought up on the wave of the first transition. It was a typical, traditional, strict African family upbringing: Christian, one wife, metropolitan template. I had my schools chosen for me, my social status laid out, and jobs lined up at graduation. The conflict came from the flip of studying in Nigeria and spending most of my vacations abroad, because my mom, for some reason in her head, made that decision. Looking back, my father was my hero, but he was highly principled, judgmental, I would say, Christian, and blunt with his words to a fault. I think that's kind of what I imbibed without thinking. This certainly did not bode well for his career in the diplomatic service. That's where he went for places. And it certainly made an impact since I absorbed his trait subconsciously, with the maxim being my way or the highway. Unfortunately, I was also obtuse. I could never pick up the hidden signals when I upset the social apple cart and caused upheaval. So one particular aspect of this was I was perceived as being rude to elders, since I always stuck to the fact that this went against the norm where elders are always right. However, I was protected from the sticks and stones due to privilege and only became unstuck after graduation from uni when my career path began. And of course, when I said it, changing jobs and trying to be myself. Right, a tale of two cities. Candidly, this should be numerous cities. But somehow, as a middle child and due to the veracities of the school calendar, I found myself living abroad and absorbing foreign cultures between primary through secondary and even until graduation. Privilege came from holidays to foreign countries, for instance. I did country skiing in the French Alps before I started secondary school, learned the French culture in Geneva. And my father's foreign postings were invariably French speaking, mostly in Africa, but I mean, aside from Switzerland. And finally, New York. New York, New York. So bad, they named it twice. Where he ended up as a consul general, and we live in the suburbs in Westchester County. And here's the quote: "You don't know what you have until it's gone," by Joni Mitchell. Right. Moving on swiftly. Mindsets. So that was how I found myself striding not only a multicultural background, but parents with different mindsets. My father had lost his mom at an early age and had been raised by a paternal uncle in the hinterlands. Any town outside Lagos, of course. And arrived in Lagos to work before university. But, went to actually went to uni in London. And that's where I was born. And he doted on us children since he wanted to have his own complete family. However, my mom grew up in Lagos and had an early bright start at formal education as the daughter of a school headmaster. She was a traditionalist, still is, and tried overly hard to compensate for dad's leniency by being very strict with us. Yeah, my pet peeve was her insistence that we children had to complete education to university in Nigeria because why? At that time, if you worked with the foreign service, the government paid for your children to school abroad. Full stop. Amen. hmm However, I got the comeuppance on her by appealing to my dad after I had graduated with a chemistry degree in University of Lagos to send me to the USA so I could be an engineer. So this was going to be another first degree, but since this was prestigious for him, for his son to be an engineer, he happily agreed. And out of his foreign allowance for my 3 years, which suddenly affected my mom's shopping trips abroad. But hey, you know, yep, I didn't even, I just had a ball. But it was in Oregon State. And I really actually had wanted to be in California. But anyways, moving on swiftly. The rule coming back to Nigeria was to stay in a job for 20 years and climb to the top of a ladder and resign as a chief executive. However, during my corporate career, I moved between different companies and changed industry sectors. The long-term effect was I never rose to the top, seen as a troublemaker, of course. But I was ambitious, I was driven, I was highly qualified, but I lacked a mentor or a coach in the early stages of my character development, and my communication skills were poor. I was a prisoner to logic. I was a numbers man, and I often got stopped when discussions got emotional. It certainly did not help that I subconsciously always gave away my thoughts with my facial expressions. I roll according to my best friends when people did not make sense. It was only after my coaching sessions, relatedly, that I understood the benefits of NLP, Neuro Linguistic Language Program. And here's a quote: "The big problems we face today could very well be solved by letting go of logic." hmm Tell me about it. Okay, subsection trauma. Childhood trauma is invisible in African childhood. Despite my privileged background, I can still recollect the horror visited on my peers who were left-handed and had sticks rained down on them to convert them to being right-handed. Hence my vivid recollection sitting in the back of my engineering class, it was about 40 students in the States, to realize about half the class were left-handed. Unfortunately in my case, though I had often realized I was aberrant, I did not exhibit the physical symptoms for the establishment to get on my case before my travel to study in the US. The university I attended was in Oregon State, a predominantly white agricultural state, and most of the African students there were in government postgrad scholarships. So I was one of the very few black students, even American black students. at undergraduate level, and the only one in engineering at that time. Yeah, tell me about culture shock, man. And HST was pretty good. It was okay. I had a middle class, nice American family. The dad was a doctor, white, established. He took me, in stride. I made some good friends. The son was about my age. He'd gone to college in Harvard. So, yeah, good stuff. Anyway, uh, I definitely made very good efforts to assimilate as well with my classmates, since I was the live. And we hadn't really many black people in Oregon. There were challenges due to my learning style, but one ideal that stuck out for me and still inspires me was the use of the honor code in class. Uh, this gave rise to my true learning path because we students could submit tests and exam papers just using our pencil, and we received back the papers with marks, and I could use that as feedback to improve on my academic performance. And it kind of came to a shock with classes because in one class I'll get a C, I'll get my feedback, and in the next class I'm getting an A minus. And the teacher is like, whoa, how did you do that? Okay, feedback. Do not ever underestimate the power of feedback. However, it all unraveled after my US graduation and the end of my internship. I'm repeating myself a bit here. In Scotland, I had returned to New York to look for a permanent US job, but with no success. So I hatched on the plan to return to Nigeria and take my NYSC, which I previously skipped when I graduated from the University of Lagos. The grand scheme of things was to return to the US for an MBA. You should have put me in a good position. And anyway, I just wanted to stay and study. Well, I got on the plane with my prized treasure. Yep, I had a compact laptop, 1986. And it was a sign of like a single sewing machine. If you're old enough, you know what that was. And landed in Lagos, where I had to stay with relatives. So here is another quote. Yes, we are indeed formed by traumas that happen to us, but then you must take charge. You must take over. You are responsible. Yeah. And and that's a quote by Camille Paglia. And that's kind of where what inspired me to read this, to write my story and take charge. Divergence. The return was a disaster. I mean, after New York, back in Lagos. Everything seemed backward to me. The city appeared to me like a survivor of a war zone. So, decrepit roads and tumbled buildings. I had lost my roots and bearings because I'd been living in a bubble abroad and a diplomatic lifestyle. There was no counseling or anyone to confide in, and some of my behavior was deemed aberrant. I was moved lockstep into the psychiatric ward of teaching hospital and put on medication. My saving grace was a psychiatric, was top-notch and UK qualified. He listened, and I gave him an understanding of my background and situation. Apparently, relatives had informed him that my case was, I was acting suspiciously, and they thought that I was on drugs. But hey, I was just hyper. So, right, and here's my favorite movie, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It's a quote by the author, actually. He who marches out of step hears another drum. I think there's an Igbo word for that already. So back to the psychologist. Although he insisted I stay on the course of treatment and medication, he was able to recommend my release from the world to daily life. This experience sobered me up, and I decided to toe the orthodox line of behavior in the future. I count myself lucky because I had a classmate, yep, from way secondary school up to University of Lagos, who had a similar experience. He lost the plot through being mistreated, went cuckoo, and died tragically in his 30s. So, yeah, I miss him. I miss him. Deeply. Things fell apart. Once I was released, there was no going back, and my parents folded up my return to the US. However, my dad, away in the US all this time, though my mom had flown home, shipped me a brand new Golf car, factory spec. And it cost quite a stare because, it was a brand new model GTI and, it was kind of pretty expensive and it was kind of equivalent to an entry level BMW. And so most people just weren't buying it, and they couldn't imagine spending so much on the Volkswagen. But actually, the flip side was that my dad, being conservative, bought me the car because it was a Volkswagen. So hey, the car was fab. Front wheel drive, great waves, air conditioned speakers. When you're a young man at that age, to die for. Luckily, I didn't crash or die or anything, but that's another story. So I completed my national youth service, working as a drilling engineer, Gulf Oil Company, and had an offshore spells in escravos. Training was pretty ad hoc. Yeah, and I had to tag along with my supervisors most of the time. 1987, yeah, that takes me back, was a period of profound oil price shock. I think prices had gone down to like $7 a barrel from like a peak of 30 or something. So there was a hiring moratorium worldwide and at my company. And they weren't hiring. So I went for an interview exam, screening exam at Shell Oil. I got through the final interview only to fail at the final hurdle. Apparently, Shell had a pretty strict regime of training for their own interns. Okay, and they gave me quite a few questions which were about how I will actually work on the field. And since my golf guys didn't put me through any routine, I failed. Yes, abysmally, yeah, but you will have to move on. And here's a quote from the movie Divergent. Everyone knows where they belong, except for me. And that's kind of the journey I've been on. And that's why I created Coaching for Purpose for everyone out there who wants to not necessarily belong, but know where their path should go. So hey, yeah, I was starting a bit models there. That's the end of chapter 3. I'm going to skip up out here and look out for chapter 4 coming out later. All the best now. Adi, signing out.